News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I'm so glad, and I must say, this is going to be 2 terms in a row for our featured guest, Curtis Voelker. Curtis, thank you so much for everything that you do here at Central Penn College, but most importantly, at least for right now, thank you so much for coming back to the show.
Absolutely, Paul. Thanks so much for having me. 2 terms in a row. All I can say is, watch out, Adrian Thoman. I'm coming for the streak.
You know what's really funny is last time you were on, you'd made a comment like that it had been so long since you'd been on, and of course, you know, we had a, let's just say, podcasting is not very easy to do in a pandemic. It's not possible to do them in masks, so it was touch and go there for a little while. I think we went 2 terms without doing a podcast, and then when we came back, it was really limited. So I do apologize, but we are definitely going to make an effort to have you back in the studio, and not even just so much just talking about what our main topic of discussion today, but we are also loving to hear more about what you do here at the school.
Yeah, and that's no worries at all. I mean, the scheduling's all on my end. We know how calendars go, so no knock at all. Just I got to get the streak up to go against Adrian.
Well, and what's interesting is Adrian has been one of those folks who we've had on quite a lot, but I got to be honest with you, she's only we've only been having her on once a term more recently.
Let's keep that pacing.
So we might be able
I know she's listening, so there's my challenge, Adrian.
And I am also so fortunate. I got to give a shout out. Adrian is the producer of her Pirate Life podcast, who just is eclipsing 70 episodes.
There we go. Congrats, Adrian and the Pirates.
And they actually have been wanting me to talk. When I produce shows, I am in the background. This is your show. I'll push the buttons, and I can do that. I have my own show. I actually had, Leslie and I did the film podcast too, so I've had a couple of my own podcasts. But they actually wanted me to get involved. So have you ever tuned into their show?
Yes, there we go. I think I made a surprise guest appearance one time. I brought in some pizza or something like that, and they were in the middle of a session, and they were test tasting some flavored peanut butters during the session. It was right after one of our drive-up drop-offs for CPC Gives Back. So, I'm loving the cross-promotion here.
Great segue into, it's almost like you're a professional at doing this. So Curtis is the Director of College Relations, and one of the things that he sort of spearheads here is our CPC Gives Back campaign. Our first 2 years, we have dealt with some pretty heavy topics. So before we get into, and I'm just going to tease, we will let you know what our cause for 2022 is at the end of the show, but that's going to require you to stick with us until then. But Curtis, let's take a look back at our first 2 years of this. So let's go back all the way to 2020. Where did this idea for this philanthropic initiative come from, sort of directly related to the pandemic?
Yeah, exactly. A pandemic hits. We're seeing our community that's in need. We're looking for some beacon of hope or light or joy because we're not sure what tomorrow is going to bring. And the college came together and started to really realize and understand, while we've done a lot of different ways of helping the community, we haven't necessarily had one overall campaign or project that involved the college as a whole.
And I think that's really important to note, because I don't want it to come off like, oh my gosh, we've never done anything for the community.
Sure.
Because that's not the case. In fact, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, Curtis, one of the reasons that I am honored that I get to spend my career here is because of the level of community engagement that we participate in. Because frankly, in this day and age, and this is just my personal opinion, frankly, I think your career, it's got to mean something to you.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to get behind what your organization is doing, not only internally but externally as well. And that's one of the things from the very beginning that you've always really spearheaded is this community relations that you've now built.
Sure.
So how did we come up with our first overarching theme back in 2020?
Sure, and just a quick note to tag on to your point, Paul, about it's not saying that we haven't supported the community in the past, and we're certainly not saying that the efforts by our student clubs, activities, or other faculty and staff are for naught. It's just saying that historically we haven't had an institutional-led campaign where everything was combined together. So
certainly not at this level.
Right. So certainly not taking away from any other types of philanthropic endeavors that have been going on in the past. But this was kind of our first step forward as a college, as an institution of higher learning overall at that higher level, as you mentioned. So let's take it back to 2020. We're looking at the first cause,
which I'm sure many people would rather not do.
Exactly, sure. But just in our minds here. And we're starting to take a look and seeing that support for food insecurity and hunger was really just popular throughout the central Pennsylvania area. And if you would have looked at different advertisements and campaigns, we were not alone as an organization supporting that cause. That seemed to be the hot topic, if you will, in terms of support needed right in the immediate area. And probably because of supply chain, which we're still seeing some effects of right now, and just some lingering effects in the area even pre-pandemic. So our very first cause for CPC Gives Back was combat hunger, and that was aimed at fighting food insecurity and just helping solve the hunger problem here in central PA.
Well, and so I think we'd be remiss to say that there is a group of us, including Curtis as the chair of this group, and I don't want to exclude anyone, but it's also myself and Adrian and several of our other very, very wonderful...
And Derek Weitzel and Susan Lynch.
I don't want to leave anybody out, but,
exactly.
But listeners of the podcast will know Adrian, will know you, will know me.
Yeah.
So between the three of us and several of our other important colleagues here at the college, including Derek and Susan, basically we've gotten together as a group, and it's sort of up to us to just come up with the ideas, do some of the research, make those connections, and then execute this initiative. And so I think if I recall back to some of these meetings, I think our biggest thing was there were so many people at that time out of work for an extended period of time. And of course, aid didn't come right away. Unemployment was hit or miss in a lot of these cases. And frankly, there were a lot of people just not getting paychecks.
Yeah.
And so that was really what our thought process was, is like, hey, let's team up with some of these food banks and food, places that provide food to people, because so many people might literally not have any means to get food. And again, secondly, too, the idea of the supply chain issues. I mean, we all remember what it was like at that time to go to the grocery store and see like
toilet paper.
Well,
yeah,
certainly. I just recall going to a Wegmans one time, and Curtis, their whole freezer aisle was empty.
I believe it.
Like literally everything.
Yeah.
I mean, you might be able to find some like frozen onions or something.
Sure.
And that just speaks to me, because that first year, I will never forget. We were meeting every Friday. We were taking the donations and organizing and storing them. And gosh, like every week, it was a whole huge cart full of goods,
hundreds of items. Yeah,
it was just unbelievable. So as you look back to that, you don't necessarily have to go through any or really all of them, but when you think about when that was over and you kind of gotten to step back and see everything all in one place, what did you think? I mean, did you think that we were going to be as successful as we were?
Oh, totally. I knew we would get there, just wasn't sure to what degree. And it really puts into perspective, as you said, visually, when we're stacking things up and donation-wise. We had them stored in one of our extra apartments here on campus.
I will never forget walking in there the last week.
And then we had to divvy it up by the 7 different organizations. And I think it just really speaks to the power that we have as an institution of higher learning to not just make an impact educationally for our students inside the classroom, but make an impact for our fellow citizens in our community outside of the walls of the college.
Now, as we move to 2021, there's something here that's really unique about this. It was not simply a canned food drive.
Sure,
that was part of it.
Yeah.
It wasn't even simply just gathering money, which, again, was part of it. But it was also trying to get our faculty and staff and students to become involved with these organizations. Yes. Now, I will say that first year was tricky because we were in the middle of the pandemic and a lot of people weren't taking volunteers. But, Curtis, I can speak to my experiences.
Sure.
I typically spend much of my volunteer time with Challenger Baseball, and they did not have a season that year. So I wanted to do something sort of more than just like a one-off. And I had the opportunity to work with New Hope Ministries in Mechanicsburg, just on the street from my house. I had a shift there every Tuesday afternoon. I got to know not only the folks I worked with, but I got to see firsthand and work with firsthand the people that New Hope Ministries serves.
Yeah.
And I would always make sure I wore my Central Penn shirt in there. And I got to talking with a lot of people. Hey, do you work over at the college? I said, yeah, we are, this is part of our philanthropic initiative for the years to try to get us out. That's, to me, what I think is most interesting about this, because it's not just collecting goods, it's not just collecting cash, which are needed, it's also having our employees and students here actually getting our hands dirty in the community, supporting these causes, and getting to meet the people who are actually being assisted by these organizations.
Exactly, and that really was able to jump up a notch in year 2 of CPC Gives Back once we started to get a little bit further away from some of the protocols and restrictions with the pandemic, and hoping to build this in year 3, again hinting at we'll be sharing with you what the cause is for year 3 coming up here soon.
So as we move to year number 2 in 2021, we also, again, sort of regrouped and said, okay, we did combat hunger, year 1. Now we're going to go in and we're going to try to think of something a little different. Mm-hmm. So talk to us a little bit about how we came up with the topic then, what the topic was, and how it turned out.
Sure. So year 2, we implemented a nomination process where we solicited feedback and submissions from faculty, staff, students, alumni, community members as well to tell us, where do you think we should go with CPC Gives Back in 2021? And we had a number of submissions, but the one that was ultimately selected was supporting housing insecurity and homelessness. One, because it's a prevalent need in the area, Central PA and surrounding counties and regions. And number 2, the college at the time was launching our free housing scholarship. So it seemed like the perfect time to be able to let people know, here is something that we have that's available to help you with this cause, and here are some other awesome ways we're planning to help this year with it as well. So it was kind of a 1-2 punch, if you will, for a positive combo to help out in that field.
And the Nightly News last year had the opportunity to team up with Career Services. And again, I would love to hear more about your volunteering experiences through all this, but what I remember is myself and club vice president and also student retention coordinator here, Jamie Harmon, Steve Hassinger, and a wide variety of other folks on our teams. We went multiple times, I'm talking like monthly, over to the Bethesda Mission.
Yes, that was also the same place myself and some other admission staff members volunteered as well.
I got to tell you, so I have, just a little bit of background about me, I have actually worked as a volunteer with the Bethesda Mission probably since 2010. Now, off and on, of course, but I remember even before I was an employee here, I worked, I was one of the committee members of their largest fundraiser of the year, which is a golf tournament. And so I've donated my time there for many years. It's something that I truly believe in our community. And it was so wonderful to get back and actually, for the first time, go into the men's shelter and get my hands, I don't want to say get my hands dirty serving food.
Figuratively speaking,
yes, figuratively speaking, get immersed in that. And the one thing that I took away, every single one of the people that we served said thank you.
Yes.
Every one of them.
Yeah.
The most polite people, all appreciative. I actually got to talk to a gentleman over there who knew a couple of our basketball players.
That's awesome.
Personally, and was asking about them. And I was like, yeah, they're still on the team. And, you know, here's a couple of dates if you would ever want to be able to make it over. And I mean, that's the type of thing, Curtis, this is the type of thing where I just get goosebumps, just get chills thinking about my experiences, just my experiences. And we have hundreds of people here at this campus that are doing the same things.
Right.
And I understand that some people approach this in a varied way. Some people just donate money, food. To me, the difference that I am personally making is that volunteer time that I am spending at these organizations, and it really has changed my entire perspective about. I've always been a volunteer, but this is the first time that I've actually gone into some of these places and actually gotten to really interact on a long term, like not just once or twice. And we're talking, months. I went into New Hope for probably a good 9 months. I'm pretty sure I worked there from about April through the end of the year. And same with Bethesda. We started in like March and we went all the way through to November. And so to me, as I think back about this is what really gets me going. These are the types of things I talk about in my class. I still, as a program coordinator, still require my students to do community service. This, to me, is what it means to be a professional in 2022 and beyond, is your involvement with your community, because it's not just about the companies you serve. It's about how you can give back and help other people. I'm sorry I'm going on a tirade here.
I love your sharing that and your experiences and your passions for volunteering. And it takes me back to a thought I've had for the past couple of years in researching fundraising and things like that with the community. You learn about the 3 T's, time, talent, and treasury. But I've had in my mind a 4th T, if you will, in the sense of tenacity. So no matter which of the 3 T's you're pursuing, I think that 4th T of tenacity comes into play in terms of that sheer force of willpower and that drive to consistently want to keep doing that. And I can really hear from your experiences and see here, our listeners only hear us, but face to face recording this, I can see the passion in your face and your body language. And with time and talent, that's where you really see a best fit for you in terms of service. Yes, you donated money as well and you donated items, but you really felt you made a positive impact the most in that sense of time and talent with the service aspect. But it's great to get out there and volunteer, but I think the true power of what you were doing comes in that fourth T of tenacity, where you kept it going. And it was like clockwork. And every Tuesday you were at New Hope. I was going between Bethesda Mission and New Hope. But no matter where it was, you had a schedule and you kept that going because there was something that was an inner drive for you. So, no, I completely appreciate you sharing that. Take all the time you need to share your experiences. And I think it really supports the 3 Ts and that fourth T as well.
And I just hope in some small way that my efforts I saw they helped people.
Yeah.
And that's really where volunteering to me can just have that huge impact when you can actually physically see what you're doing actually helping people. And I will say, as before we move on to announcing the cause for this year, we had a great opportunity as a group at Christmas at the Italian Lake. This was actually after our last podcast. Bethesda Mission every year has this huge event over at Italian Lake in Harrisburg, and we got the opportunity to be over there and be a part of it. And I actually got to work with the carriage rides. I got to work with the horses. I don't think I've ever even been on a horse, but it was really cool because honestly, you could see the families there having fun. You could see the impact that Bethesda Mission was having on people, and that was obviously different than going to Riley Street. But it was just so nice that we were able to get out as a group. Like 7 or 8 of my club members were out helping as well. It was just a really incredible opportunity, and I'm looking forward to continuing to volunteer this year.
For sure.
Well, without further ado, how about this? We had you on sort of at the tail end of last year.
Yes.
Let's talk about some actual numbers here. Share with the audience, how did the CPC Gives Back, Raise the Roof campaign, and what can we say and share with our audience?
Yeah, so Raise the Roof really did pretty well last year with CPC Gives Back. We raised over $7,000, which was dispersed evenly through 7 different organizations in surrounding area counties through Central PA. We collected around over 5,000 or 6,000 care items, and these are items like shampoo, deodorant, toothbrush, toothpaste, new packs of socks, underwear, everyday care items that we typically use and may take for granted are a lot of the things these homeless shelters were looking for. And we provided over 300 hours of service.
That's incredible.
So we pretty much hit 2 out of our 3 goals. We had a large monetary goal of $10,000. We came in at around 7, but still to be able to give each organization just over $1,000 in monetary donations, I think it's a win-win for everyone involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, we were so lucky to get to work with some fine organizations. Again, I don't want to list them all off here, and certainly you can go to centralpenn.edu and find some write-ups about some of these things. But again, to your point, 300 hours of community service. I mean, that's just incredible, the amount of personal care items that we got. So we're kind of hitting you in all ways. Like,
sure,
we're helping you, with your volunteer needs. We're helping you with financial needs. We're also helping you with the needs that you need to, on a day-to-day, keep your establishment going and continuing to help people. So
time, talent, and treasury.
I love it. All right, let's go to the moment everyone's been waiting for. This is the first discussion. Now, I just want to preface all this by saying we are still very early in our...
Yes.
We always take winter term to put logistics together, and then we're going to have a big kickoff of this in spring. But just to sort of wet your whistle a little bit, Curtis, tell us what cause we are going to be supporting this year.
And Paul, I'm not sure if you have a drum roll type sound effect.
I will find
there
one.
We go. So we'll give a couple seconds for the drum roll. Okay. All right. So our 2022 CPC Gives Back appeal is going to be related in supporting the field of animal shelters and supporting just animal welfare overall. So we don't have our name or our organization's picked just yet, as Paul mentioned, or our goals established. But we know moving forward, we are now actively researching organizations we would like to support that help support animal shelters, animal welfare, and things of that nature.
And certainly, if you have any ideas, we're still in the planning process.
Yes.
Email myself or Curtis Curtis. I'll put our email addresses
Great.
along with these. So let us know. Tell us about animal organizations that maybe you believe in and share a little bit with us. Now, again, we are doing our own research, but sometimes, just
Sure.
a personal experience from somebody is really going to be helpful. So let me ask you, why do you think that this was the one that was selected as this year? Because we're talking about two really heavy things, right? Hunger and shelter.
Yeah.
So those are two of our
Yeah.
basic
Yeah.
needs. This kind of goes in a different direction.
Sure. So the President's Cabinet reviews our selections from our group, Paul and I, and our other team members we mentioned earlier in the podcast. And, I think we're still coming off the tail end of the pandemic here. And who doesn't want to help out our furry friends, right? Who doesn't want to help out these cats and dogs and other animals and future pets in these shelters or, service animals as well? Man's best friend, and we need to support them, all of them. And I think it's just going to be a fun campaign and a unique campaign where we can do some really special things.
And one of the things that you brought up in our correspondence, of course, we do have Petapalooza coming up,
Yes.
so it'll be an
Yeah.
extra special Petapalooza this year.
Yeah, so similar to you growing up, had a few dogs growing up, but then here in adulthood, if you will, don't have pets right now. But growing up, and as we shared my personal story on previous podcasts, when I was living with my parents, we had a pure white Siberian Husky.
Oh, wow.
Beautiful dog. Very interestingly enough, every time my mother would make spaghetti, he would sit right by the stove and wait for it to be done. Very odd, I don't know. And I finally remember one Easter, I come out into the living room and Blizzard was on his back, legs up, just in total bliss, because right next to him I see a completely empty pack of Twizzlers that he ate. So he enjoyed Easter as well. And as I moved in with my aunt and my uncle, through my personal story, we had a brown chocolate lab named Bailey. And always enjoyed having
That
pets.
was my beagle's name.
There we go. Okay. Growing up, but just no pets right now.
Hey, you know what? I'm so happy that my family got me over that initial, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And I've just loved them so much. So there you go. CPC Gives Back this year. We are going to be supporting animal causes,
Yes.
shelters, service dogs, those types of things. So please, if you have any ideas of some organizations that are animal related that we might be able to involve in this process, please email myself or Curtis Voelker. Of course, I'll put those emails along with this podcast. So Curtis, I just have to thank you so much. You are, as they say, the straw that stirs the drink of CPC Gives Back. And without you, I don't know where we would be. I'm happy to be a part of this, but you're the driving force here.
Well, thank you for being the ice cubes and keeping things so cool.
That's funny. All right, well, Curtis, as it's always a pleasure. How about we have you back sometime later in this year and we can kind of update us on this and any other initiatives that you have to talk
Yeah,
about?
that sounds like a plan. I mean, the goal of the day is beat Adrian Thoman, right?
Let's just keep pace at this
Exactly.
point, right? All right. Well, hey, Curtis, thank you so much, and it's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. Stay tuned. We'll have Nightly News correspondent Jamie Harmon with the Nightly News Brief. But for the Director of College Relations, Curtis Voelker, this is Professor Paul Miller, and I'll see you again next time on the Nightly News Podcast.
Hi, this is Adrienne from the Student Activities Office. Thank you for listening to the Nightly News Podcast.
This is Nightly News correspondent Jamie Harmon with the Winter 2022 episode of the Nightly News Brief. This news podcast features audio versions of stories from our student reporters, articles by Janelle Dulac, Professor Paul Miller, Leslie Heimbaugh, Kevon Davis, and Dylan Bowman are featured on today's episode. Central Penn College gives all students the opportunity to live in gender-inclusive housing in the campus supersuites. Gender-inclusive housing gives students the option of living together in a room or suite regardless of their gender identity. Making sure students feel comfortable and safe is a top priority. The gender-inclusive housing option was created at Central Penn to help ensure that all students feel comfortable living on campus. Over 24 Pennsylvania colleges and universities offer a form of gender-inclusive housing, according to a range of college and university sources. Offering gender-inclusive housing is very important to college students. It can help students adapt more easily than they would in an environment that could make them feel uncomfortable. This option helps campuses achieve gender equality. Central Penn student Janelle Dulac started Love You Housing, an LGBTQ advocacy housing, which was the spark that kindled gender-inclusive housing at Central Penn College. After COVID-19 hit, Dulac and former Residence Life Coordinator Brianna Biller came up with the idea to turn Love U into gender-inclusive housing. Their idea came from the realization that Central Penn's college campus had a deficit of safe places for the LGBTQ community. Dulac, who is also president of the Nightly News, said, quote, "A lot of people don't recognize the need for gender-inclusive housing. So bringing this option to our campus allows for more open opportunities for the students of Central Penn College." End quote. All students may request to live here, whether they are transgender, non-binary, or cisgender. To be accepted, a student must state that they are an ally to the LGBTQ community. Residents of the house act as defenders of all people, regardless of gender identity. Individuals who live somewhere else on campus but would feel more comfortable in gender-inclusive housing may request to be moved to it. Contact Residence Life at centralpenn.edu. It is a bittersweet moment for the fans of the Nights at the Movies podcast as the final episode was released in January. The venture by Professor Paul Miller and co-host and former Nightly News president Leslie Heimball was a passion project for the duo. Both individuals are avid film connoisseurs and use this podcast as an outlet to discuss their impact film has made on their lives. The podcast, which debuted in April 2021, will have had a run of 10 episodes over 10 months, covering topics like auteur directors Christopher Nolan, Quentin Tarantino, and the Coen brothers, as well as ranking their top films and holiday classics. The podcast is coming to an end due to Heimball's graduation at the end of the fall 2021 term. While the duo does not rule out additional episodes, the regular recording schedule will be on a hiatus. Being part of the Nights at the Movies podcast gave Miller and Heimball an opportunity to think critically about their relationship with film. Heimball said, quote, "Watching movies gives me a chance to filter out the world around me and engage with characters and stories that are often so different from my own experiences." End quote. Miller explained, quote, "Film is such a moving medium because we all have a connection to it in some way. It might be a part of a tradition, a way to connect with different people, or a way to stimulate your mind in a positive way." End quote. Heimball shared that over the course of the 10-month run, feedback from friends and colleagues has been incredible. Quote, "When I first started podcasting, I was scared to death that I would say something stupid, and I hated the sound of my voice. After listening to the first podcast, I felt instantly relieved. The conversations we had were fun and engaging, and I found myself laughing along and loving the content." End quote. Even if this is the last episode that Miller and Heimball record, both individuals look back at the experience in a positive way. Heimball discusses the experience. Quote, "There was absolutely no downside to podcasting, as I got to talk about one of my passions with a smart, well-informed, and equally passionate person whose positive reactions in real life urged me to be myself." End quote. Miller said, quote, "The best thing about modern technology is that these episodes will always exist. Even if we don't record again, fans of the show can always go back and revisit these episodes at any time, and we hope they do." End quote. All of the episodes of the Nights at the Movies podcast can be found on the Nightly News Media Club YouTube channel. The Central Penn College Knights baseball team received some welcome news in the recent weeks. The team will be playing 4 home dates, 8 total games at FNB Field on City Island in Harrisburg. Central Penn College and the Harrisburg Senators announced this partnership as a part of a press conference on February 23rd at FNB Field. The stadium is home to the Harrisburg Senators, the AA affiliate of Washington Nationals. Central Penn Athletic Director Casey Hicks said, quote, "I am thrilled about the opportunity to call FNB Field home. A lot of offices and departments helped in making this happen." End quote. The Knights will face Penn State Hazleton in the first FNB Field game on March 15th for a doubleheader starting at 1 p.m. The team will still play some games at In the Net Sports Complex, Palmyra, but will play the majority of their home games at FNB Field in 2022. Besides March 15th, tentative dates for Knights games at FNB are March 23rd, March 31st, April 15th, and April 22nd. The Nightly News Media Club will be broadcasting all of the team's home games in 2022. Keep up with the schedule at Nightly News Facebook and the Twitter pages. For more information, a schedule, game locations, and times, check out centralpennnights.com. The Nightly News Media Club is beginning an endeavor to work with the West Shore Connect program to develop a promotional video during the spring term. Nightly News reporter Dylan Bowman and co-advisor and assistant professor Paul Miller have signed on to be a part of the project. The group all have an extensive background in film production. Bowman has been producing films under the brand Fellowship Studios for nearly a decade. Miller has also created The Final Out and has taught film production classes at the college. Since August, 4 students from the West Shore School District have been taking classes at the Summerdale campus. Central Penn College is partnering with the West Shore School District to provide transition opportunities for students who are between the ages of 18 and 21. The partner program called West Shore School District Connect enables these students to explore opportunities available to them through higher education as well as gain socialization skills. The video is expected to be completed by the end of the spring term. Following fall term CPC film series showing the comedy Robin Hood Men in Tights, the series took a dramatic and action-packed turn focusing on the depiction of law enforcement, particularly the U.S. Secret Service. This term's presenter was the director of the Criminal Justice and Homeland Security Program, Jonna Whitcraft. As it was her first time presenting in the CPC film series, she looked forward to sharing one of her favorite films with the campus, Olympus Has Fallen. Whitcraft's desire to share the film with Central Penn stemmed from deep personal connections with her family, most notably her father, who would watch movies with her that were, quote, probably not appropriate for children, end quote, but had a historical perspective to them. In fact, Whitcraft's favorite film genre is historical action, which she grew up watching. When asked why she chose to present Olympus Has Fallen, Whitcraft explained her reasoning. Quote, I was going between this movie and Tombstone, my all-time favorite. I think Olympus Has Fallen is very interesting. I just love the way Gerald Butler plays the main character, and I love that this isn't how Secret Service agents act in real life, end quote. Olympus Has Fallen was a box office success, grossing $170 million worldwide against a budget of $70 million. It is the first film in a trilogy with London Has Fallen and Angel Has Fallen. The Central Penn showing of Olympus Has Fallen drew a crowd of about 35. Many of the viewers stated after the showing that it was intense and really, really good, displaying what seems to be a desire on campus for action-packed films to be shown. The good news is that there never seems to be a shortage of heart-racing stories that can be presented to the public. Whitcraft closed by saying, quote, I just want everyone to take away from this film that there is a difference between real life and the movies. At the end of the day, every law enforcement officer is real and wants to go home to their family. I think that's something we forget. Sometimes with these movies, the law enforcement and police officers are real-life people, end quote. The CPC film series will continue with Nightly News President Janelle Dulac presenting the 2007 edition of Hairspray. This has been Nightly News Correspondent Jamie Harmon with the Winter 2022 episode of the Nightly News Brief.